Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Tate, and bringing back Paul Klein for another episode of the Harry Potter 25th Anniversary Retrospective. And today we are going to be discussing Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, released in 2004, directed by Alfonso Cuaron. Arguably the greatest Harry Potter film. That is the conversation that sits around this film this day forward, and has, I feel, been this conversation for 10, 15 years now. So I'm excited to dive into this with yourselves. How are we all doing today?
Yeah, doing okay, doing good. In the UK, we still have this ongoing endless heat wave that's kind of, no rain or anything like that. But today, or at least this evening, it's a little bit cooler, so ready to talk about some Harry Potter.
Yeah, same. Just trying not to die in this heat. It's not great. You can't waterboard me. I'm on SSRIs and have done 4 consecutive back-to-back heat waves. Nothing will kill me now.
You just need a Dementor to freeze the area to create a new kind of aircon. That would be the best timing ever. Everybody, if they're listening, make them real. But for people that don't know, this is the 25th anniversary retrospective. Last week, we had the first two episodes releasing every Monday and Friday. Philosopher's Stone, I was joined by Tate, and Chamber of Secrets, I was joined by Josh Jones. So I'm glad I've got 3 of us to Prisoner of Azkaban, because this might be the biggest one in the context of the Toy Story 2, shall I say, of the Pixar retrospective, where everybody wanted to come on that one. Going back to the Spielberg retrospective here, everybody wanted to come on Jurassic Park. And it's been a bit more noticeable in these retrospectives, so I'm interested to see what happens down the line. But we've got some very exciting guests that are going to come on as well. And before we kickstart this, the synopsis and everything else, Paul, I want to put you on the spot. What is your memory with, I guess we could say, the Harry Potter film series, going back to 2001 as we sit here 25 years later?
I remember being obsessed with the books. My mum used to read them to me because I was a wee little baby boy. And I remember, I saw every single Harry Potter film in the cinema with my mum. That was like our thing. So I remember seeing the first one. I think I saw the first one like 3 different times in the cinema. And then I had it on VHS. Oh, the VHS. Extra good because it had an advert for Scooby-Doo the movie at the start. So like extra good for this guy. And then I remember the second one. I used to really like the second book, and the second film I'm a bit iffy on. I don't like it so much. And then this one came out, and I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. It's so good. And I've maintained that for ever since. I still think it's the best one.
I think that's very fair. I'm excited to get more about that. I've got stories to tell. I mean, let's move into. We'll do the official HBO Max synopsis, which is Harry Potter's life is in danger once more. Brackets. Thankfully, they said once more. As dangerous wizard Sirius Black has escaped from Azkaban prison and is heading to Hogwarts. And kind of segueing what you just mentioned there, Paul. Let's talk our own memories each with this film. So I saw this at the cinema. I'd have been. I think this was like early 2004, so I was 7, almost 8. I'd seen the first 2 with my parents and my sisters, or with aunties and uncles as well. And we watched this as a family. This was the last one we watched as a family at the cinema, as in the 5 of us, because we weren't taken to watch 4 or 5. Don't know why. Different conversation for the parents, I guess. I know why we didn't watch 5. I can get into that. But I don't remember disliking this. I loved it, but my favourite was the Chamber of Secrets. That's the one that I loved the most up until, I said that last video, up until probably Deathly Hallows Part 2 came out. And I think it's in the zeitgeist in 2004. Star Wars is still going, Harry Potter's still going, Spider-Man's still going. We're in this really elite nostalgia era, I guess we have to call it now. And it's only really until I would probably say I was like 15, 16. I think I did a rewatch when I was at college, which would have been before it was the studio tour for the first time, which I want to say was 2013. And that's when it started to hit me. I was like, oh, Prisoner of Azkaban, that's a really good film. You know, when you start to, I don't want to say like you get intelligent opinions or anything stupid, but it hit a level as I got a bit older that Prisoner of Azkaban stood out for different reasons that I didn't appreciate as a kid. And obviously the wider perspective, we'll talk about the world building, designs behind the scenes. And it sort of stuck with me. And it's not just me, you hit that social media point where you're online a bit more. People talk about these films and everyone starts collectively saying, Prisoner of Azkaban is the best Harry Potter film. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know if critics were saying that in 2004. I wouldn't know. I was a child. But I did have the Lego Night Bus, which was very cool, and that was the only set I got from the third film, which kind of became a little bit of a back burner as we headed into more Star Wars and Doctor Who era. But Tate, I'm curious on yours with this too.
I had a very, very interesting experience with this film. So, the first time I watched this film, I actually won a local newspaper competition to go watch it the opening weekend in a giant, I guess, IMAX Severe Globe styled cinema in Bristol. For people who knew at Bristol when it was around, it's now called We the Curious. It's a science convention center for kids, and they have this massive observatory, IMAX kind of almost 3D kind of, surround sound global kind of screening. And I won a writing competition. I had the hardest task in the world. I had to name Harry's owl. I wrote in the answer very confidently, little 7-year-old, 8-year-old me, and won the competition and got tickets for my entire family to go see it. So my first kind of experience with the film was already tainted because I already loved the film before I'd even seen it, because I was getting to go to this massive cinema. But that didn't take away from the fact that it was an amazing film, especially as a kid. I think nowadays people who are coming onto this franchise, if you're coming on as an adult or anything like that, then it's a very different experience watching it. Like I said in the first kind of review for the Philosopher's Stone, these are the films that we really grew up with. These are the films which kind of, they followed us almost kind of to the same age of kind of, of what we were experiencing and what we could look up towards and everything like that. So to go and kind of watch this film on a big screen experience like that, it was really magical, on top of the fact that the film itself was, the best Harry Potter film, which confidently I can say now. Back in the day, I think I was enamored a bit more with Goblet of Fire and with Order of the Phoenix, but I think that's because that was a bit more kind of independence for me growing up and going to see that kind of on my own instead of, seeing this film, which was kind of a family experience and stuff like that. So, like looking back now, I can turn around and say this is probably the best film. And, a lot of changes kind of made here, a lot of kind of focuses and direction choices that Alfonso Cuaron made, which made this kind of film, and I guess the films going forwards, set the tone and made it a bit more magical. But no, loved the first experience of this film.
Paul, I know we mentioned yours a little bit, but anything else you want to add on your maybe early memories of Azkaban rather than the series?
I think for me, it was just the darker elements of it, I think, that I liked. I liked the design more. I think for me, Hogwarts looked more like I had imagined it looking. So I think that was mainly part of it, where I was a bit like, this is how I pictured it when I was reading the books. It looked a bit more like a big Gothic castle as opposed to the kind of welcoming one. And then as I've gotten older and I've rewatched them, I've really appreciated sort of Alfonso Cuaron's style a bit more. I think when you watch, it's weird from a directing standpoint. The first two are quite, everybody's in the middle of the frame. The camera doesn't really tend to move all that much. It's very kid friendly in a way. It's like, right, camera goes here, people in the middle. You enter left to right, you leave same way. It's very sort of stately, and in that, which works for like a kid's film. And then this one has really bizarre transitions and just the kind of that some of the shots, it's just weird the way the camera moves, and you're like, this is really kind of trippy, which is why maybe I don't like Goblet of Fire, because I feel like Mike Newell kind of went a little bit backwards into the camera, enter, leave. And then maybe David Yates had a bit David Yates's ones are weird because some of them are really stylish. I think Order of the Phoenix is really stylishly directed. When you get the all the newspapers, and it goes through one newspaper into the next one, and it moves through the letters, and that montage of Umbridge taking over the school is, again, that's really well directed. But then I think some of the stuff in maybe Deathly Hallows Part 1 is like, has fatigue set in, David? are we tired? Are we bored of doing these films back to back? Because he then starts to be a bit like, oh God, I've got to find another way to sort of shoot a wand battle when I've kind of run out of ideas. But this one always stuck out to me as like just really bizarre. Like even rewatching it, it's just really bizarre how there's one bit where he does the change of the seasons via a bird flying, and it like flies and it's like kind of the summer, and then it goes and it's snowing. And he just gets fucked up by the Whomping Willow. You're like, this film is so weird. And I think that's probably why I like it so much.
I think there's a lot of. We'll get to the director, but certainly creatively, this feels the most artistic Harry Potter film, without sounding pompous. Chris Columbus does this phenomenal job with the first two, establishing this world, this universe, these characters, this image, the school, the stakes to an extent. And then you come in with I don't want to say an adult, because I don't mean to disrespect Chris Columbus, but his approach to the process was, we'll get to this, but we'll treat the kids like they're actors and they're adults and they're working. Without crossing, obviously, boundaries and legal stuff. And I think what's really important is the behind the scenes on this one, where we don't have as much to say on the second one, not on the first. This one's really interesting. So, obviously, when we do these, we spoke with the second one. It came out 12 months after the first. They were filming within 3 days of Philosopher Stone releasing in cinemas. They made the call at Warner Brothers, particularly David Heyman, to switch the films to an 18-month cycle moving forwards. Obviously, logistical issues, the kids growing up, going through puberty, the sets, the work, everything. I think it was the right choice for them to do. And I think an 18-month cycle is completely fair for the filmmaking process. And I'm sure we'll bring up the show a fair amount like we do on each episode so far. It seems the show's going in a similar route. Obviously, we don't know fully, but the first season was a 10-month shoot. There's a 3-month gap. And now everywhere's reporting filmings at the end of August/September. So that puts the show on like a 13, 14-month shooting schedule rather than complete production cycle. Which, again, when you're dealing with young actors, child actors, in a series which they will age and you're at school with them, you do need to push the productions alongside, like what we have very well here in the UK, strict shooting laws for children. So they don't end up being mistreated or burnt out, etc., etc. But we'll talk director. So we mentioned Chris Columbus has gone. Alfonso Cuarón go. I just want to name drop a couple of names that declined or in the finals, and I want to just hand over to you guys. So Guillermo del Toro declined this film, as did M. Night Shyamalan, as did Mark Forster. The final three it came down to was Callie Khouri, Alfonso Cuarón, and recently discovered Sir Kenneth Branagh. That's a wild variation of career choices for directors. And I'm going to just really quickly give my thoughts on this, that Alfonso Cuarón was maybe the lightning in the bottle, that he's gone on to, I don't say like do a Nolan or what we'll say soon a Ryan Coogler, but he got the franchise under his belt, did one entry, and then he's been able to sort of lift off with the rest of his career. Obviously, he'd done some great films already. Whereas some of the others, I just couldn't imagine. I mean, Mark Forster said he never wanted to work with children again, because he did Finding Neverland. So how he got down to being asked. Guillermo del Toro would have been an interesting pick, but I don't think he would have enjoyed sticking to the trajectory of the school. But then you think of Guillermo del Toro doing Werewolves, and you'd have been like, oh my. It's a crazy list, and I want all your thoughts on You have to go through everyone individually. I'm curious to know what you guys think.
I mean, of all the directors there, the two that catch my eye are, of course, Guillermo del Toro and Kenneth Branagh. I mean, M. Night Shyamalan would have been a God. We've seen how he messed up a franchise with the Avatar films. So,
Plural films?
Well, film and, the legacy of that, the fact that, even Netflix now is struggling to make a live action version of it. But at least the Avatar series itself is going strong. And the recent film, by the way, go watch it if you're a fan of the series. It's fantastic. Guillermo del Toro, I guess, would have been one of those cuts that hurt. I guess not in the same way. I think it just would have been really interesting to see, all the animega stuff, not just the werewolves. Like, this is the one film where there's a lot of creepy doings. You've got a mass murderer, serial killer on the loose, apparently. And, you've got also, the Dementors. Guillermo del Toro's version of the Dementors would have been nightmare fuel, pure nightmare fuel. So as a more adult kind of delve into it, it would have been very interesting to see if he'd have done this film, and also if he would have done more than one film and continued on the franchise, because that would have been very interesting indeed. Kenneth Branagh as well, I can absolutely see that working, especially because, you know, he was already in the previous film. It makes sense to kind of keep him around and stuff like that. He obviously liked it, you know, to the point where he was kind of put himself forwards, or at least he was suggested forwards, and he got down to the final three. So that would have been interesting as well. But I guess Alfonso Cuarón, I mean, if you look at his films beforehand, I haven't seen any of his films beforehand, but he went from this film and immediately did Children of Men. Which, you know,
banger movie,
absolute banger movie. And then since then, he's only done a few. He's done, was it Gravity and Roma? That's it. I can't think he's done anything since Roma.
Oh God, he hasn't, has he? I mean, I'm in the crowd that liked Gravity. Sorry, I've seen it once though.
As well, but I'd only ever watch it in cinema. I wouldn't want to watch it at home. I think that's a go watch on a big screen kind of film.
I can't, but to present E2 Mama Tambien back when I was at college. And I think from memory, it's got a young Diego Luna in it. But I couldn't remember much because we did a whole area on Spanish language films, and a lot of them are blended into one, unfortunately, because I'm going back like 15 years now. But yes, I mean, Paul, sorry, I jumped in before you got to speak.
No. So for me, the Del Toro connection's interesting because Del Toro and Cuaron are friends, and they're also friends with
Inarritu?
Alexandra Gonzalez Iñárritu. They called themselves the three amigos of Mexican cinema. So Del Toro is such a good choice because obviously you think this comes out in 2004. 2 years later, out comes Pan's Labyrinth. And you think if he could bring some of that Pan's Labyrinthness to Potter, the two Potters that I would have loved to have seen him do is actually Chamber of Secrets or this one. Because I think Chamber of Secrets, if he could have brought some of the, you know, Del Toro's an interesting one because, you know, he did Hellboy, and that's a studio movie. And he did Blade 2, which is a studio movie. And I think he would have had great fun with the spiders. I think the whole sequence with Aragog would have, and the Basilisk, you know, because he loves kaiju movies. He loves Godzilla. He loves all those monsters. And, you know, giving him the reins to make a giant snake would have been great. And this one, I think, is also so up his alley with, you have this apparent serial killer who's stalking things. You have these Grim Reaper-like ghost monsters coming in and sucking the souls of children and making them collapse. And, you know, all of this weird stuff.
Yeah. As a what if he did do this film and went on to the next film, can you imagine like the maze at the end of Goblet of Fire? Or the dragon
the mermaids.
Or the mermaids or anything like that.
Do you know what? Doug Jones as one of the mermaids in Goblet of Fire would have been... Because that's the thing as well, like, the characters in 3 and 4 are so Del Toro-esque. Like, you have a crazy psychic lady who actually is a fraud apart from the one time she got it right. You know, you have a shrunken head. You have an apparent serial killer. You have a depressed guy who actually is a monster, but actually has the soul of a really innocent, sweet man. But every so often he becomes awful. You have all of these weird, you know, these horrible parents, and one of them explodes into a giant balloon. And you're like, that's so Del Toro. And then when you get to the fourth one, there's a guy who's got a mental eye who's constantly twitching and gurning. And it turns out he's a serial killer, neo-Nazi, trapped inside an innocent man's body. You've got this weird Rasputin-like headmaster. You have a giant who runs a school full of beautiful ladies. You have dragons. You have all this political stuff. You have insane mermaid monsters. And then you go, and then the final thing is a maze, which leads to Satan himself rising out of a cauldron
with Del Toro designing.
That would have been Doug Jones.
Voldemort.
Doug Jones would have been Voldemort. Like, and also, I would bet that he'd be like, I know we've got like a British actors only, but can we put some Spanish people in, please? Like, or can we make one American exception and can we put Ron Perlman in, please? Please let me put Ron Perlman in. Please let me put Ron Perlman in. I reckon he would have been like, let me cast Ron Perlman as Karkaroff. Like, I'll do whatever you want. Just let him be Karkaroff, please. And I think he would have been a good choice. I think Mark Forster would be a terrible choice because every
Yeah.
time I've seen a studio big budget film he's done, he's collapsed under the weight of it. Quantum of Solace is bad. World War Z is bad. He just can't handle this kind of big budget studio stuff. And a Harry Potter, I think, would have crushed him. And then M. Night Shyamalan, he would have cast himself in it. Like, he would have been, it would have been all these young children, then it would have been Shyamalan woodenly going, it's like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands.
No,
Zoom in with Shyamalan.
No, he would have clearly cast himself as serious. And it would have been just so like...
I don't see Callie Curry, who by this point had written Thelma and Louise, fair enough, won an Oscar, had directed one indie film. It's like she would have buckled under the pressure.
Yeah.
And Branagh I get, because Branagh's a good, as we've now seen later on. He's a good steady hand for the, like Thor. Very good. Like he takes the notes from the studio. He's like, what do you want? Okay. Cinderella, again, Disney are kind of the harshest taskmasters you can get. And he managed to make a great big superhero film that pleased Marvel, and then made Cinderella, which everyone says is one of the better remakes.
He's kind of got the Oppenheimer. He's got the Oppenheimer meme where if it weren't for Cinderella, he wouldn't have. If he didn't do Cinderella, we wouldn't have had all the Disney remakes coming one by one. Because he made a decent one. That's what began. He's got his Oppenheimer. I think he was in Oppenheimer. And he's on stage at the RSC at the moment with Alfie Enoch, which threw us off guard when we recorded the second episode.
Only thing I would say is, had Kenneth Branagh directed this film,
it would have been like the first two.
No, we definitely wouldn't have gotten Emma Thompson as Professor Trelawney.
Maybe that's why he didn't.
Maybe, because also I know that, I mean, not to jump to other episodes, but in Deathly Hallows, wasn't there like a contractual thing where they were like, every day Helena Bonham Carter is on set, Emma Thompson won't be. And every day we need Emma Thompson, we cannot have Helena Bonham. Like, Emma Thompson will not be on set with Helena Bonham Carter. It's like, I mean, I know it's been 20 years, but fair fucks.
I don't know if that was true. I think they did a lot of the press together, didn't they? Not together like paired, but I'm sure they were at a few of the big events together.
I'm sure they kept a healthy distance.
I don't think they would have been on set at all together. If I'm right, as in I don't think the characters.
She's barely in it. I read somewhere that it was like Emma Thompson's like, I'm not being on set with that woman. I'm sorry. And it's like, do you know what? It's kind of fair.
I don't think it's like Bronn and Cersei, which will eternally no one ever knows what happened there. For two characters that should have been in many, many, many scenes. Different franchise, different conversation.
Also, just Kenneth Branagh's casting is always so bizarre. Like he's, I feel like because he wanted Brian Blessed to play Odin. Like, yeah,
that'd have been great.
It would have been so. Every single line bellowed at the top of his lungs. But like, that gets you thinking. Like, would he have gotten Ian Holm to be in this? Would he have gotten Brian Blessed to be in this? Like, it would have been amazing.
Brian Blessed as the fat lady, or
I've smashed it with my voice. Sirius is alive.
The one thing with Potter, I don't actually know outright. I don't know if the directors. I don't think it's a Marvel where the studio dictate who's in what. But I feel that the studio sign off on what the directors ask for. Am I right with that with the Potter films? That they suggest names and the studio says yes or no. Obviously, the British rule comes in first, which is fine. But that would have been interesting to see if he might have changed things, because we'll talk about the aging ups later, because that's a huge topic point for me. But if we stick to another big behind the scenes, which is a bit heavier, I say obviously like it's a horrible thing. Richard Harris passed away just before the Chamber of Secrets released, and it was trying to determine, do I put that on this episode or put it on episode 2? I've chosen to put it on this one. He was obviously diagnosed with illness. There's a lot of stories out there about his last conversation with David Heyman, where he's like, don't recast me, I'll be back out soon. Stories about him writing his autobiography in hospital, but he passed away sooner than anyone anticipated. I do remember that as a child, like 6 years old, and seeing it on newspapers. It was this huge thing, which is probably the first time I was like aware of that celebrity culture side to the news, because we didn't really get it. Well, I didn't at that age. But the names that were lined up or who'd gone to replace him. Peter O'Toole was originally linked due to his close relationship with him. Peter O'Toole declined it out of respect to him, even though I think the family were pushing for that, which I think would have been interesting. And the understanding is the studio weren't sure about Peter O'Toole if he'd be able to finish the films.
Maybe we don't cast another infamous alcoholic to play Dumbledore, the linchpin of this franchise, who has to do action in the latest.
Yeah.
Maybe J.K. Rowling was like, just letting you know, he actually has like 10 action sequences in like the next 5 books.
Well,
so
I was going to say
maybe not someone who is 70% vodka.
Because the Order of the Phoenix is out at this point in time, but not yet Half-Blood Prince. But obviously on set, they know and are aware of what the upcoming stories are. Obviously, they get told who and what. Christopher Lee would decline it, which is kind of wild casting. I'm never going to say no to Christopher Lee. I personally don't think he would have wanted to, well, I say wouldn't want to sign. He didn't sign on. That's the reality.
Harry, did you put your name in the goblet of fire?
I think he'd at least been authentic to the books, because he cared for that. And the other name to decline it, which everyone knows the story by now, is Ian McKellen, who A, had already played Gandalf, and B, Richard Harris famously called him a terrible actor. And Ian McKellen has never forgotten that. He said, I couldn't play his role when he disliked me. I love that he's been open in his life about that. But they all passed on the role
too, as well. Like, you just played in 3 of the biggest movies of all time.
Wow, he was never basically. It's an easy excuse.
The original Dumbledore. Like, Dumbledore is basically Gandalf. And you got Oscar nominated for it. Would you then be like, I know what I'll do. I'll sign up to do 5 more wizards in massive beards. That's what I'll do. Like, you would just be like, I just did that.
And
then he would have gone straight into the Hobbit after.
Yeah, then he would have had to do, like, he's like, I'm never taking this. Just fuse this beard to my face. I'm never going to not be playing wizards.
20 years later, he's still playing Magneto and Gandalf today. Fun behind-the-scenes fact. And Michael Gambon would obviously go on to be hired. And he did a slight Northern Irish accent in honour of Richard Harris, which I always liked and understood. And we'll get to his performance a bit later. But if we talk the wizard world-building section, now, Tate, obviously this was pretty full-on when we did the first episode for very obvious reasons. And this one's a little bit lighter, thankfully. We have a brand new Hogwarts. And I would call this, I put it in the schedule, the definitive Hogwarts, where if you've been to the studio tour, you've seen the scale of the castle. I won't name drop. I've got a friend who's worked in the industry. She's a prop decorator, set decorator. This was her first ever gig in the film industry, painting this when she was in her late teens, early 20s. Unreal to have had that as an opening point to a career. That exact one you see at the studio tour, because that's what they made for the third film. They wanted to map out the geography. They wanted to make the castle more established. This is where they start filming more and more and more within the studio. They're not filming Privet Drive within the location, the street. They're starting, I don't think it was this one, or was it when they returned in the 5th? I could be wrong. That's when they moved to designing the street, because the family or the council was basically holding them to ransom because they knew it was Harry Potter films. They're going to make easy money either way. So more and more come into the studio. And I know a lot of this through the studio tour, which I guess we all do if we've been there. And I just want to talk about the Hogwarts quickly, because some people have complained historically, they weren't on location, they were doing this. At this point in time, contextually, 2003 purposes, they know they're going to get 7 films. They know they're going to be ramping up productions. They're shifting to an 18-month cycle. The choice to then go and bring everything in-house, I think, was the best thing they did for the longevity of the series. Obviously, we get the Tudor out of it, which nobody knew in 2004. I think at this point, Warner Brothers had purchased Leavesden. I could be wrong. Outright purchasing the Leavesden land itself, which obviously we know is now their UK headquarters, which is gigantic and has expanded. But I love the Hogwarts design. I think they get to show it off in this in Goblet of Fire more than people would think. Like, they're almost flexing the castle because they've got all these great shots of them flying around, skirmishing around, and I understood why they could do that in the first 2 films. And I just think making that castle established from this film, it's a very simplistic thing to do. It was the best thing to do. We get the astronomy tower, we get the clock tower, the courtyard, which, as any of you guys have seen Alfonso Cuaron's interviews, he had a very famous, I think it was a Mexican sculpture put in there, and that was his way of like getting something from his homeland into the Harry Potter films. And I really like it. And some people don't like Hagrid's new hut, but the man needs a bedroom, so they doubled it in size. My in-canon explanation would be he was so offended at Lucius Malfoy's comments in the second film, he got an extension. But who knows?
I think it's there's a lot of noticeable things in this film which over time you kind of pick them and go, actually, this is kind of where the bedrock is for the entire series part 2. Because of course the first film and the second film lay the groundworks and kind of set up the story for the rest of the films to go on with. But this film is the one where it takes a slightly different turn. It doesn't involve Voldemort at all, this film. There isn't really anything in this film that, I mean, there's minor kind of links and stuff like that, but there's nothing that directly says that Voldemort is the main threat of this film. So because of that, it's a very personal story. And because we've got this new definitive Hogwarts, and we can actually kind of see the entire castle, we get to go through a bit more. You have the giant swinging clock for the first time and stuff like that, which really stands out. You've got going down to the lake and kind of, you know, that area where Buckbeak kind of takes Harry and stuff like that. And you've got the new hut, and everything feels almost aged up slightly, and everything feels almost a bit more adult and a bit more serious. And I think that's been said already, that this has a darker tone to it. But we'll talk about kind of the Golden Trio in a bit, because they all feel definitively older than the previous film. And everything feels like it's a bit more adult, or a bit more at least teenagery. Instead of being a kid's film, it's now a young adult's film. And I think the castle and kind of the settings and everything like that, it reflects it. And that's due to the direction, of course, the production that's behind it. But like, it feels like because we get to actually see the castle in a different light, because we see the Quidditch with like a stormy setting and stuff like that, everything feels a bit more kind of like, you know, it sticks in your mind even more. Of course, like that first image of Hogwarts I had burned into my brain from, you know, from Philosopher's Stone. I can't really think of any establishing shots from Chamber of Secrets of Hogwarts, and can't really think of anything that makes me think, well, that's what the Hogwarts castle looks like from that film. Whereas from this film, there are so many shots from the outside, so many, and so many shots of like interior spaces, which you're suddenly kind of mapping out where things are in your head. You also have the Marauders map, which helps you kind of, in a way, also map out where things are in your head and kind of figure out kind of things as well. So it does a lot more world building than I guess the second film has done, in the sense of like space and where things are. Of course, you've got Hogsmeade as well, in addition to that. But I don't know. It feels new, but it also sets the tone for the rest of the films going ahead. And it's almost like the Goldfinger of the Harry Potter films, because it really, you've had the first 2 establishing films, and that's the one that sets the tone for the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Hagrid's hut that I always assumed was that because he became a professor, he got a higher salary, and so he could therefore extend his. Genuinely, that's what I had been assuming since I was a kid. I was like, well, yeah, because obviously a groundskeeper gets paid rubbish, and a professor would get paid decent. And now that he's a professor this year, he's got more money, so he's obviously going to extend his house. That's my canon version of why his house is different. But I think, yeah, the first 2 films, everything's like on one level. Like the castle's there, and then you got the Forbidden Forest is here, and you got. Whereas in this one, because there's like, you know, it's got levels to it, and you have to walk down. Yeah, it feels more foreboding, which is important. It just feels a bit more lived in as well. It feels less like a set and more like an actual place that is, you know, the ground is growing around it, the forest keeps growing, all these sort of things. And I think just the design of it just works a lot better. And I think in a way, yeah, it's kind of a soft reboot in a way that you've kept most of the cast, but the style has changed. And I think in a way, Michael Gambon helps with that, because you get a slightly edgier Dumbledore than Richard Harris. Richard Harris was playing your granddad.
I can't really imagine Richard Harris in this film.
This is the thing
of Michael Gambon.
I can't imagine Richard Harris, and I mean this really nicely, in anything past the second film. And that's not because he was in the second film. Again, contextually with where the books go, they'd have been sat there thinking, oh, yeah, he ain't going to be able to swing that fire around for 10 minutes in 10 years' time. And I think they made a really measured choice. Dumbledore kind of is like you mentioned Paul, like a soft reboot term. Dumbledore's kind of that, like, not excuse for it, but like the film visually changes and you get a new headmaster with it.
Yeah,
Not that it's doing that intentionally, but it always sort of blended together. That
it's
we
I
don't.
can't.
There's not been another big recasting in the series
Yeah,
after
I just
this.
can't see him doing. I don't know, because Dumbledore in this is a lot more sort of. If you look at the first two films,
Physical.
particularly if you, well, not just physical, but his personality. Like if you look at the first film, you think about that scene with the Mirror of Erised, which is my favourite scene in Philosopher's Stone, and he warns him about it, and he says, it will drive you mad, and that's a grandfatherly thing to say, like, it doesn't do well to dwell on dreams and to lose yourself. It's like that's a really lovely scene, and it works so well with Richard Harris being this older grandfather figure, and even in the second one when he's like, no, let them rest, it'll be fine, everyone remain calm. He's kind of a soothing presence, whereas Michael Gambon in this one, when he's like, my favorite bit is when he's like, whenever I get lost, I always think about retracing my steps. Good night. It's like, you're so unhelpful. You're so unhelpful in this movie. He's like, 3 spins should do it. Bye. And it's like, we saved them. Saved who? Bye. It's like,
Yeah.
why are you so annoying? You're so unhelpful. Like, whereas Richard Harris would be like, use your time turner, go back in time, save both of them, come back here, tell me that you did it, and then we'll go. Whereas Michael Gambon's like, I'm going to give you a riddle, and then I'm going to wander off. And it's like, you fucking bastard. It's like, why are you so tricky? And also, I couldn't see Richard Harris doing one of the funniest Gambon bits, winding up Cornelius Fudge by going off on tangents and like, well, if you look over there, all these, it's like, you are such a wind-up merchant. I just can't see Harris doing that. He's got a bit more of a gravity, whereas Gambon is a bit more eccentric.
And I think John Lithgow's going to be the blend of both. That's my genuine, without getting into a show conversation. Like the images, his acting, his performances, what we've seen. I think he's going to be a blender, but his own take on it, right? It's like James Bond. Not that I need 6 different Dumbledores, but do your own interpretation. Don't mimic what's come before. And I think Lithgow, I don't want to be that guy, but I'll say it again. We know what we're about to say. Should he make it to the end, which is really horrible,
Well, I will say,
different conversation. I won't.
This is one of the things. It's like you're putting a wig and a beard on him. You could cast someone who's 50. They will look old with the beard. You don't have to cast someone that is like fucking 80 years old. Why are you so obsessed?
This is your audition right now.
So the fact he's
good night.
The fact he's doing theatre,
like, do it.
Yeah, he's 80 and he's done a West End run again recently. He's just done a New York Broadway run of the Roald Dahl play. It's again, like, I don't want to talk about that politely.
No, we'll just end up with a different Dumbledore each film.
Hugh Laurie did take the money, but for the audio book, didn't he? Which is a shame. We'll find out one day what happened there. But
proof will be in the pudding if John Lithgow asks calmly if he put his name in the goblet of fire, or if he screams it at the top of his lungs.
They'll probably record both.
If Dumbledore asked calmly.
If you're the social media admin, you have him record both just to use one as a joke for future reference.
The thing is, 100%. Richard Harris would have asked calmly. Richard Harris would have been like, Harry, did you put your name in the goblet of fire? He'd have done it calmly, but Michael Gambon was like, I've got this, guys. I'm going to run full pelt at this child and grab him by the scruff of his collar and slam him down into a chair. It's like, why? Because I'm Michael Gambon. Fuck you.
I think that's Mike Newell as well. But we'll get to that next week. Because that's going to be fun talking what happened to that director. I mean, I'm not... In this section, we talk about the story, the adaptation, the direction. We spoke a lot about the director. I don't have a lot to say on the story, right? Because with this series, we're looking at the anniversary. We're not going to go into the plots of everything because we've all done that to death a million times. We know it. I want to look at more of the legacy of the film. But what I will say about this film, something without getting to cursed child territory, the story of this, without going too deep, because I think we'll end up talking about it through certain characters when we get to the big ones. This film handles time travel in a far more sensible way than most fantasy and sci-fi has ever done it. And that is just through the simplicity of you go back in time, you have to relive what you've gone back to, and then you can come to the present, vice versa. Enter the cursed child, which just throws out of the window for no reason. And then even in canon, they have their own solution. All the time turners got destroyed in the Order of the Phoenix, so no one can ever use it again. Great way to get rid of that plot hole, because someone would have cried 20 years later online about it. Your thoughts on just the concept of time travel doing it in Harry Potter? I really like it, and I remember it being a big twist. When you're reading it, Hermione was there, she wasn't, and I think the film does a really good job at bringing her in sporadically throughout, with Ron figuring out but not figuring out.
I really like the slow introduction of it and kind of figuring out, well, how is Hermione just appearing out of nowhere? And there's even a scene when Buckbeak attacks Malfoy, and you see it round her neck. But also, I noticed that at the start of the scene, she hasn't got like a cloak fully off, and then by the end of the scene, it's fully off. So I do wonder, did she try and stop Buckbeak from attacking there? Did she do the time to? It's just a little note that I took this time around. I was like, oh, that's interesting. They've really shown it in that scene. I mean, apart from that, it's the one thing that I really want them to get really, really right in the series is I want them to be a little bit more clever about it. I want them to be just a tiny bit, because the one thing you lose in this film is the sense of time when the time turner is used. We've saved Buckbeak, and now it's like pretty much nighttime. They're that one bit where they're sitting still, and then after that, it's like, okay, and now this scene's happened, but this scene's happening at 5 times the pace that it originally happened, and we're skipping over dialogue and stuff like that. And now we're here and stuff like that. I know in the series, it's going to be a lot longer than a film. In a film, you've got to cut things down and make them palatable. But for the series, I really hope that they do actually scale it in a bit closer, so it isn't the case of this entire section takes 45 minutes or whatever, and we're just going to show you 15 minutes of what the time turner version of that is.
It'd probably be an episode, I'd assume.
I think it's going to be more than one episode. I think it's going to be possibly 2 episodes. It'll be episode 1 will be the kind of before the time turner. Episode 2 will be after the time turner. And
yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry, like a whole episode.
Them going back in time will be the cliffhanger. Like they'll go back, and then he'll look at the clock and he'll see. He'll be like, "We're 10 hours earlier."
You end with Expecto Patronum, and that's what ends that episode. And then you got the final episode to clean everything up.
Yeah, I mean, I like the time travel stuff. I think it works quite well, and I think as well, it's one thing I will say is that it's still quite tragic that the whole thing about no one has to die tonight, and it's like, yeah, this is going to be really triumphant. We're going to save 2 innocent people. It's going to be fucking great. We're going to have a great time. Harry's going to have a new family. Buckbeak's going to be eating all the weird ferret things. Everyone's going to have a great time. This is going to be absolute win. And then you get to the end, you're like, oh, yeah, there's actually no proof that he's innocent. That kind of sucks. It's the most Pyrrhic victory in a film where you're like, yeah, but Peter Pettigrew could prove he's innocent. Yeah, he turned into a rat and ran off. It's like, oh, yeah, that sucks.
An unregistered rat.
Unregistered.
The only people
they do not address how creepy that is. The show needs to address how utterly creepy that is, because they're like, he's a man, and it's like, I don't want an Office style cut to Harry sat in a chair going, we need to address how there was a middle-aged man sat on my best friend's crotch. I let that thing lick my face. You don't need to do that, but you do need to address me you were a man, but you need to do a Sally Field in Mrs. Doubtfire. The whole time? The whole time? You're that is actually creepy as shit. Fuck. I didn't even think about that. It's so disgusting, dude. Also, the one thing I did little 10-year-old me, was when they're like, he's actually a man. I was like, oh, that's why the spell in Philosopher's Stone didn't turn him yellow, because he's not a rat. God damn it. This thing's
we'll get to that. I mean, with I know what scenes we're going to get to. We've got to go through the big character intros. I'm going to jump to the cut that hurt. And I'm going to make a very, very, very specific choice in a great scene, but I don't want to talk on that scene yet because that's going to be probably the big caveat of the film. I've got one minor gripe. And this film actually changed a fair amount because they had, it was a longer book than the first two. They had to cut some things out. Tate, you mentioned the time turner really well. In the book from memory, the whole year, like Hermione's doing 2 classes at once. She's got like blackened eyes from studying and homework. Like she's mentally exhausted. So the show will probably do a good job of that. And I don't mind them because you can only tease it how you can tease it in the film without it going too long. And I liked how they did it as twists. Whereas in the show, it's probably going to be really obvious when you get to it. Whereas the film, it's only obvious when you're looking back, as I said, when you see things. There's one moment, and this is one of my biggest gripes with the film series. I think others talk about this a lot elsewhere. The films go down a direction where like Ron starts to be like third wheeling Harry and Hermione. And it's not because he's not in the fun eye of this. I love that, the first film's the 3 of them together. The second film's Ron and Harry. The third film's Harry and Hermione. The 4th film's Harry by himself / with Cedric. The 5th film, they're all back together for the climax. One thing that I always disliked of this, which is when they're in the Shrieking Shack, Ron's obviously got the damaged foot from the bite, whatever. Hermione jumps in front to protect Harry from Sirius Black. That's a very small moment, but it's Ron that does it. And where I go with this is a really, I know it's in the section of the cut that doesn't work. It worked for the context of the films, but when you start to see all these small moments of Ron getting sidelined to be given to Hermione, the film really starts to bridge a gap. And using my dad as a demo, when he watched them for the first time, the end of the year before last, he kind of said like Ron as a character was crap by the end of it, had nothing to do. He was like a joke character, pointless. And it's because they take so many of his important scenes, either cut it with the family stuff, which I understand, or they just seem to give it to Hermione. And Steve Kloves, who obviously wrote 7 of the 8 films, he's on record said Hermione's his favourite character's right, but he just kept giving her Ron stuff. I think that's something looking back it doesn't make any impact on the film, but those little moments where Ron starts to get sidelined, you notice it more and more. And that's what I picked as this. I don't know if you guys ever noticed something like that, or have you thought about it in the series, but it does make a difference. And it's not that annoying because this is a pretty hard film, by the way, to pick a bit that was cut that annoys, I'm going to say.
I mean, it's been so long to watch the book, so I'll go with a joke answer to this. The cut that hurt, I love Alfonso Cuaron's long takes, and I wish that his long take in the Leaky Cauldron lasted longer. So the cut that hurt is when he called cut on it, and we switched to the next scene because I wanted more long takes in this film.
Yeah, I think mine would just be the explanation of the Marauders, because the problem is that they never actually explain who.
You're right.
like, because you get the thing where it says Mooney, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs, and there's a whole chapter that says, we became Animagus because he was a werewolf and we could protect him, and we picked these things, and that's why your Patronus is a buck because James was a buck. He was Prongs. He's Wormtail because he's a rat. He's got a Wormtail. He's Mooney because of the wound. Padfoot because he's a, and then because later on, what's really weird is that I think it's Order of the Phoenix, they're just calling Sirius Padfoot, and it's like, but you've not set up why they're calling him that. He's calling him that as a callback to his dad, so that's like a bridging, and that's why that whole bit then makes the bit at the end of Order of the Phoenix when Harry does the thing and he says, "Nice one, James." That means more because you've set up that he is showing so much signs of his dad that Sirius just becomes blind to the fact that they're 2 different people. He just sees his best mate again. So it's just that cut. I think just would have just
it's like a minute.
It's just a minute to explain what those nicknames are, because you set it up with the map and then you never really pay it off of, and also you never pay off who made the map. Like, they never actually explain it. So, again, you've got this MacGuffin in the movie. There's 2 major MacGuffins, the Time Turner and the map. And you explain the Time Turner, and you never explain the MacGuffin. And it's like, it's a major plot element, and you've just ignored the importance of it, which is, it can't, because there's that bit where he's like, oh, it's wrong. And it's like, it can't be wrong. And it's like, well, how does Lupin know it can't be wrong? And it's like, you never get that bit where he's like, I made the thing. I know it's right. He's like, I made it. It's mine. It was mine, and your dad's and Sirius and Peter's. We made it. So it just that's the cut that I think bothered me most, just because I was a bit like, that's a 2-minute scene that just explains it. Just in the Shrieking Shack, you just get just a little bit extra, and I feel like there was no reason not to have it.
I'm fully with you, and I think also the Snape side of it too, and the long-term ramification. They kind of stick with the borders. I'm going to go into a change that worked, and this is maybe should have been said in Philosopher's Stone, but I think that's in that video. I'm going to save it for today. The conscious decision to age up the characters, the Marauders, and Snape, the 5 of them, not 4. Well, I guess Lily 6 if you need to, but the key one is they wanted Alan Rickman in the film. And they knew that he wasn't, in his 30s when they were doing Philosopher's Stone, as they were in the books. So they made the conscious decision to, age up Harry's dad. It made it a bit more normal, no problem. You got Alan Rickman, but that opened the door in this film to bring in 4 of the great British actors who we'll go into properly later. And by aging them up, you're able to bring in. I hate using phrases like screen geniuses, like in their prime or at their peak, or their generic statements. But you get legends of British cinema coming into this. And even if I want to look reflecting 25 years later, that then also opens the door when people say, oh, you've already adapted the books. One of the only caveats is get the fucking ages right, because now you get to hire some of the best young British actors who didn't get the chance, when they were younger. So that change worked so well for the films. And I know we'll get into those actors, so I won't say the names yet because we're going to talk about them, which I know is going to be a big segment. But anything you two want to talk about, one each, before we get into the next zone?
I mean, for me, we've already kind of discussed the change that worked for me, which is actually a change which was brought on by Chris Columbus declining to return. Just a different director in a different direction of the series. I don't think the series would have still been loved, but I don't think with Christopher Columbus returning, it would have been, anywhere near as kind of a big of a franchise, and it wouldn't have gone to those darker places if he was still at the helm.
Yeah, I mean, the change that worked is aging up. Although I will say you do lose an element of the tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in a way, it becomes a bit more palatable that Harry's parents are dead, because you're like, well, that's slightly more palatable that they look like they're 35 when they die. Whereas if you have a 20-year-old brand new mum in the prime of her life and a brand new dad that, they're 20, 21 years old, that's a lot more tragic. And that's actually a lot, even in like Philosopher's Stone, I think it then would have tainted the innocence of that film if you had these 2 really young actors dying, because that is, that's the tragedy of the whole prophecy. Is it's like these 2 young people have to die, and then 20 years later, at the same age almost, their son has to die too. And also, when you get every death, it's like, so Sirius is only 34 when he dies. That is really young. That's sad. Remus is only 35. That's sad. And also, it makes the other issue with the aging up is it makes Snape a little bit creepier, because a 35-year-old still being in love with someone from, say, 15 years ago is weird, but not that weird. A 50-year-old still being in love with someone from 30 years ago is really, really weird. It's creepy. And it kind of... So I will be interested to see how they do that. And also, Papa Essadou is a terrific actor, so he's going to be able to do his own thing with that role. But I think it works because you get Gary Oldman, you get David Thewlis, even you get Petunia, you get Fiona Shaw, and you get Richard Griffiths. Because if they were age appropriate to the books, they'd have to be younger as well. Because obviously you can't have a 50-year-old Petunia and a 20-year-old Lily. It would just be weird. So you get these excellent actors, which is a good thing. But I think you do lose some of the tragedy that I think would have sullied those first 2 films. Are very innocent films, even though there's darkness and there's death. They're quite innocent, and that's also one of the things about Chris Columbus not coming back. I don't think he would have been able to handle the horror elements that this film has. Like, I don't think he would have been able to handle a werewolf or the Dementors in the appropriate manner. We get quite scary with Voldemort in part 1. We get quite scary with the spiders, but not too. It's still very like scary. Yeah, but because they're like PGs, and it's like scary for the little kids. Whereas, like, and obviously, my barometer is I showed my son, and he's 7, so he was like 6 or 7 years old watching them. He was fine with Voldemort. He was fine with spiders. When you get to the Dementors, they really freaked him out. When you get to the werewolf, the werewolf as well is horrific because it's this character that the whole film has spent. He's the nicest guy, like
Mm.
even more than like of all the new characters introduced. You have this crazy lady that's talking about the grim, the grim. You're like, okay, you're crazy and you shouldn't be around kids. You have this supposed serial killer. You know, you have all these things, and you have this one guy who's just kind of a depressed guy in a cardigan being like, I just miss my friends. I don't know what to tell you, kid. It's life's pretty shit, and it's not great for you, but you need to be better. And then he turns into the scariest thing you can imagine against his will. It's like, I don't think Columbus would have gotten the abject horror, not just of a werewolf, but of a really good man having to fight against that. Because that is the real horror is, you know, when he's turning and Sirius is like, this is your heart. And it's like, you can't stop it. He's going to become a monster, guys, run. So I think that's something I don't think Columbus would have been able to handle.
I think that's fair. I mean, he did write Gremlins, but of course didn't direct it. Let's segue into characters. So we've got the Golden Trio once more: Harry, Hermione, Ron, played by Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, and Rupert Grint. Obviously, with a bit of a gap between the second and third films, I'm going to group them together for the simplicity of this. As what happens with young actors, and I don't like to persecute young actors, particularly kids, the acting comes on leaps and bounds as the series progresses. I think the third one's the most noticeable jump. The reason why, for me, Alfonso Cuaron. We all know the homework story. It's the behind the scenes. You know, write however your character would, X amount of pages, 1 page, 0 pages. Everyone knows the story. What's interesting is that the actors spoke about that task being the foundation of not just the third film, but everything after. Their approach as they were starting to be treated like adults, like actors, and that improved their performances working with the directors. That's not to diss on Chris Columbus, because his work with young actors is remarkable, and there is treating a 10-year-old is different to a 14-year-old. That's a huge change for anybody growing up. And I think the third film, the gap in between, I think helped that somewhat. I do think this is one of the best performances by Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson in the series. Not to diss Rupert Grint either, he just doesn't get as much to work with. Again, little changes here and there. Obviously, the final act, he's not really involved in it. But I think this is the point where we are seeing them more as actors. I've got nothing more to add on those three. With you guys want to?
No, I was going to say this is noticeable changes between their acting, and yeah, sadly, Ron doesn't get much to do in this film at all. You know, Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson get a lot to do in this film, and therefore they kind of come on leaps and bounds, and you can kind of see their acting and their chemistry on screen as friends is really good. Ron's kind of the comedic character. I know he's the comedic character for the series, but he is more kind of backline to being the comedic character in this film. But I mean, yeah, for Daniel Radcliffe, it's a very good performance. Even looking at the later films and stuff like that, I think that this performance is better than some of the performances he puts in later on. Even though he has a lot more acting to do in the ones later on, I think this is kind of the subtleties of his character and kind of how he, you know, just how he is in the film and stuff like that. I think back again to direction, Cuaron does a lot of work with reflections in this film. A lot of work with Harry looking at himself in the mirror in various different scenes and various different things, and that kind of reflects into his character with it. But, you know, Daniel does such a phenomenal job at kind of showing those different emotions when he's looking into his own eyes and also looking into kind of, you know, his own life and progressing and growing up and having to deal with more serious things. I mean, as a kid in this school, he's already dealt with 2 death threats, and this film is kind of an impending one, an imposing one, and instead he has to deal with the trauma of having to actually finally confront his parents' death in a different way. So it's a very adult theme thrown onto, you know, still quite a young actor, but, you know, Daniel Radcliffe does a really good job of displaying it.
Yeah, I think as well, it comes down to the actual story. Like, if you look at the first 2, he's not got a lot of scenes where he's not with another kid. Like, the first one is very trio heavy. The second one is quite Ron and Harry heavy, and there's a lot of scenes of him by himself. But if he's doing a major sequence, he's normally got another person. In this one, it's a lot of acting against adults, and it really helps that you've paired him. And again, this comes down to the casting. You've paired him with David Thewlis. So that scene on the bridge, which is my favourite scene in the film, it's my favourite scene in Harry Potter. Your mother was an uncommonly kind woman, is such a beautiful sentiment. That is acting. You're acting with one of the great British actors. David Thewlis is one of the best. He's worked with Mike Leigh. He's worked with some of the great directors. You're never going to be better than when you're acting with him. And then you get that scene by the lake with Gary Oldman. And again, Gary Oldman is, without a doubt, one of our great actors. And you've got Daniel Radcliffe and him just acting the shit out of that scene. Like, there's not... All right, it then turns into a horror movie with Dementors and stuff like that. But you just get like a little 5-minute sequence of them talking, and you can just see Daniel Radcliffe being like, right, I'm going to take that from you, I'm going to take that from him, and then later on in the films, he's like, right, and I'll be taking that from Brendan Gleeson, I'll be taking that from Ray Fiennes, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and he becomes the actor he is now. And of all the young actors in the Harry Potter canon, with the exception of maybe Rob Pattinson, more about him next episode, I think he is the strongest actor. I think Rupert Grint's really good. I think Emma Watson's really good. I think Tom Felton's really good. But I think he is the strongest of them. And you see that in the choices he then makes later down the line. He doesn't then just go, I'll do Marvel, I'll do DC. He's like, I'll do the farting corpse movie. I'll do the movie where my hands are sellotaped to guns and I'm running around in a bathroom. I'll play Weird Al Yankovic. And you're like, well, this is not the work of a franchise guy. This is the work of a guy who spent his childhood with some of the weirdest character actors Britain can offer you. And again, it comes down to that tone thing. I actually think the first signifier that we're in a different mode is when you see Mark Williams as Arthur Weasley. And Mark Williams is like comedy gold. The Far Show is still one of the funniest sketch shows we ever had. And he's in some of the funniest sketches, and he's really funny in the second film. But even he is like, we're in a more serious mode. And when he does that bit where he's talking to him, and he goes to say Voldemort, he's like, don't say his name. He's like, when you know who. It's just such a really good scene where you're like, everybody's sort of like they get the assignment that Alfonso Cuaron has given them, which is, it's less kiddie. It's a bit more serious. It's a bit darker. It's a bit nastier. And I think, I just think that Daniel Radcliffe really sort of, if there were weaker moments in the first two, there are no weak moments here. The bit where he screams he was their friend, you're like, he gets it. He's going to do absolutely fine with what's, because obviously you say like book 5 was already out and you're like, well, we already know that he's got some pretty powerful scenes in book 5 of being tortured. And then you already know that it's going to build to a confrontation with Voldemort. So it's like, this kid will be fine. He's got it in the bag. This guy's got the goods to go up against Ray Fiennes at Fulham. We're good. But yeah, I think they're all good, but he is particularly strong.
I think that's very fair. I mean, we're going to very briefly touch on the Dursleys. We talk about them every week. That is until they're not in them. Next time. Love the Aunt Marge stuff. It's that return. It's kind of like how it is in the books, right? You get the opening chapter of everyone. It's like, this summer he's been doing this. What are these dastardly evil people up to now? And this time it's, meeting the one person that even Uncle Vernon's scared of, and that is Miss Trunchbull in Harry Potter. Love the Aunt Marge stuff. I know you spoke about the practical effects earlier with the directors who've been involved in that. I think they kind of know at this point, these are important scenes, particularly, hey, can you sign this bit of paper? I need it to be able to travel because that's actually an integral plot point for this year. Introducing the night bus, Stan Shunpike, the concept of I know it's technically world building, I didn't include it, but that makes the world feel bigger, that there are, there's things outside of London. I love what we get with them. Not as comedic, not as long. They know at this point in time they're kind of a one scene and done type family. But I like the scene. I like spending time with them. I've got nothing more to say. And if any of you guys do, because I'm just keeping eyes on the clock as well.
I mean, it's just a yearly check-in at this point, isn't it? They kind of get less and less to do each time, and at this point, it's just kind of like the comedic thing of what does Harry do on his summer holidays? this year he, inflated his arm. It's kind of it.
I think
think
what
as well,
annoys me. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think as well, it's quite good because you do see a little bit of that teenage rage in him. That you get a little bit of a Carrie thing where it's like he's actually not quite in control of his magic. When he loses his temper, he inflates Miss Trunchbull, which is such clever casting. Because the minute you see her, you're like, I don't like you. Even though I love Pam Ferris, terrific actress, so perfectly cast. Because the minute you see her, you're like, I do not like you at all. And then it turns into this big absurdist comedy bit, and you see Alfonso Cuaron's got quite a funny sense of humour, and the whole thing of the finger starts, and as she's going up, and he's trying to grab hold of her, and then he's going up in the air, and the dog then bites his ankle, and then Petunia's running around screaming, and then it just cuts to Dudley, and he's just sat there watching like Strictly Come Dancing.
I was going to say, Dudley, I think the fact that Dudley at this point is just like, I'm glad he isn't picking on me, and at least it's quite funny what's going on in the background and stuff like that. He's just like happy to sit there and eat his cake and just like, Harry funny. Did something magic again, whatever. Like,
it is that thing of like, it's just that thing of like, what else can we do? Well, what if she inflates, and then what? And then Richard Griffiths grabs her, and then what? He starts floating, and then what? The bulldog bites him. Why? I don't know. And it is quite funny because you're just like, and then she like bounces against the greenhouse, and it's so. And also, I like the detail that later on, when he's walking before he gets the night bus, you can see her in the sky,
in the background,
still going. And I just think that, and also that kind of, it seems unimportant. But it then sets up a really interesting thing with Fudge later on when he's like, we deflated your aunt and we adjusted their memories, and that's that. And you're like, what do you mean that's that, though? That's not that. And he's like, yeah, it's all good. Hogwarts to you. And you're like, right, you are a politician, aren't you? Because you're not telling me something. And so it's like quite interesting. It's like it's not just like a James Bond pre-credit sequence where it's like, we'll just have this, it'll just be a funny little thing, and then we won't mention it. It's like, actually, it does play into the wider thing of action consequences, and when there are no consequences, it means there's something worse happening, and then that sort of plays into things later on. But I really do enjoy that opening sequence. I find it so funny.
And it's the last time we see him for 2 more films, which is annoying because 6 more so than 4 is probably the most integral scene featuring them, which the show gets to fix, which we'll leave for them to in a couple of years if people don't know what that is. But let's talk the core teachers. I say let's talk. We're going to talk Defense Against the Dark Arts. We're going to pop them in the new edition section. But Dumbledore, we spoke about McGonagall, Hagrid, Snape. Not as much for those 3 this time round, which I'm okay with. I've got not much to add on this. This is
I do like the fact that, and this is, I don't know if this is in the books as well, but when Snape comes out of the Whomping Willow and is ready to go have a go at the kids, he is the first person to throw himself in front of them, and you genuinely feel like he is like that is him switching from I'm not acting as a person who's pissed off at Harry here. I'm actually willing to give my life for him at this point because I know the greater mission kind of moment.
Well, to quote The Dark Knight, in their final moments, people show you who they truly are. He thought, you think you're going to get killed by a werewolf, and what's his first instinct? They're kids. All right, They remind me of the person I lost, and I really, really hate them, but they're kids. And
but also, I mean, looking forwards in time, everyone knows at this point that he's kind of double agenting, and it's his mission to keep Harry safe at all costs.
Yeah.
We've already seen that in the first film, and this is kind of continuing on, and Harry's still not getting it. That he is protecting him, and he has been the entire time, kind of, even though it's been glaringly obvious, people have actually physically said it to him, and he just still doesn't,
It's a very subtle moment that's only in the film, if you're curious.
There you go.
In the book, he's knocked out. I believe when he wakes up, that's when he goes to the lake, takes Sirius back to the castle, and gets his moment, which is something that the films do a phenomenal job at making Snape far more likable. Different conversation, probably much more in detail, and definitely Hallows Part 2. But if we talk the new additions to the cast, and I'm going to get Trelawney out the way first, played by Emma Thompson. We spoke about her a little bit. Kooky, weird, necessary for the story, necessary for later stories, which they didn't know about. I like her. She fits the tone. I like Emma Thompson's in this Miriam Margolyes scenario where she's tired of people bringing up Harry Potter to her, because like what people forget with the adults, They did a couple of days on set per film across 10 years. They didn't grow up on those sets. To them, it was a week or two here or there. Not that they dislike it, but I think it's a bit of a Harrison Ford conundrum where they like it, what they've done, they respect what they've done, but that's not the only thing they've done. And Potter, I think, is more probably a worse offender in a nice way, because obviously it's a much bigger ensemble, whereas Harrison Ford is a lead of a trilogy rather than ensemble character in 2 or 3 films across 10 years.
Yeah,
exactly.
And Emma Thompson already has like 3 Oscars by this point. So it's not like she's some newcomer that got discovered. It's like she's actually been in some quite important movies, actually. Like she, Footlights, big deal, big comedy deal. Howard's End, Remains of the Day, some stuff with Branagh. She's actually Sense and Sensibility was a big deal, guys. So for them to be like, so this Harry Potter that you did 2 days on, like, what was it like working on Order of the Phoenix? I had one scene where I cry. That's it. What was it like being in Deathly Hallows? Well, I look upwards, I take out my wand, and I go. So I can't say it was a career highlight. I also get why Miriam Margolyes is just like, guys, move on. She's like, I could not care less. She's more blunt about it. I think Emma Thompson's more like, that's really sweet of you. Thank you so much. Whereas I think Miriam Margolyes is like, how old are you? Do you still care about these kids things?
And she does it at the convention where they're paying to meet her.
I know.
They're paying them to be insulted. I think there's an incredible irony.
Also, by that point, you must know that Miriam Margolyes is going to do. Miriam does what Miriam wants. So, like, if they're like, she was so rude. Yeah, she's Miriam Margolyes. She's like an 80-year-old. Like, what did you expect her to go? Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it was a big, important role. Yeah, no, the Mandrakes, they really spoke to me. Like, she doesn't give a shit.
And the best thing she worked, but that's why she's only in 2 of the films, because it's clear she only came out when she had to. But let's talk this year's Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, Professor Lupin, played by David Thewlis. Paul, I know I've got you on for this episode, mainly on not just the film, but this too. Without a doubt, there's so many great cast members that come on board this. The second best teacher that Harry has at Hogwarts School is Lupin. The first is ironic because it's actually a Death Eater in the next film. Different conversation. That's a very book-heavy conversation, but I think David Thewlis changed it. The first year you get Cuaron, who, let's be honest, we don't spend time with until the twist at the end. Second one, Lockhart, comedic genius. At this point, we don't know about the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher curse. But when you bring in Lupin, who's this kind teacher, he's getting to train with the common folk. He's a bit worn down. He knows his stuff. He's competent. After you have Gilderoy Lockhart, you need to go the opposite way, right? You need someone that can actually teach them. And I love what they do. And the background of it simmering, there's something off about him that we don't know, and we're going to find out eventually. That the best teacher he ends up having this year ends up being a werewolf that's responsible. And it's hard to talk about this without bringing the others in, because we're going to go through each of them. But I think what David Thewlis brings in this film, which he doesn't get the opportunity to do in the later ones, I think you mentioned the scene on the bridge earlier, Paul. It's one of the best scenes, and I think he brings a gravitas to his character. He brings the shyness with. I mean, he's depressed, right? All of his he believed all but one of his friends is dead, and the one that he is alive, he believed killed those friends. Like, he's lived a life of anonymity. He's a werewolf. He has to basically hide. He's looked down upon by his own type due to that. The background is, he was bitten as a child because his dad fell out with someone who was threatened. He's probably one of the most victimized characters in the Harry Potter series. And I think what David Thewlis does, just in one lesson, by the way, which is one of my favorite scenes, which is the ridiculous spell. I love everything he brings to the character. I've got more to say, but I'm going to hand over to you two because I could be here for a while, and I know we've got a few big names to go through.
Just if it's casting for this film and whatever they needed to do, bring in as many thespian actors, as many stage, screen, whatever, just high level actors as possible to play the roles that need gravitas. And this is a role that needed gravitas. It needed Harry to have a teacher who he could actually listen to. And we've already mentioned this beyond that because, David Thewlis was a teacher for Daniel Radcliffe as well, as far as kind of his acting performances, because he was acting alongside him. And I think that's really, really important in this role. And the fact that, between the three Marauders we see in this film, between Gary Oldman and Timothy Spall as well, you have gone and picked three of the biggest names, Academy Award winning or nominated actors that you could possibly, get your hands on to play these roles where even as an outsider looking at it now, you look at that cast and you go, wow, without even knowing what the characters are, you could look at that and go, they're some of the most important characters of this film. They have to be, with those kind of people put together and stuff like that. But, I can't see anyone else playing this role, which was, I think I said that when we did our recasting of it. It's so difficult because David Thewlis does such a good job of bringing that humanity to a monster of a character underneath the veil. But also, just he is there for Harry. He has the conversation with him on the bridge. He covers for him with the homework. He has a go at him because of the Marauders map. He's like the dad that Harry never kind of had, which obviously gets passed on to Gary Oldman as the films go on after this. But, that is that character Phil there. It makes Harry feel, like he's got a member of family there, which, is exactly what he needed for this film and exactly what he needed at this time.
Yeah, I mean, in other things, I've gone on at length about how much I love Lupin as a character in book and in movie. And Thewlis is one of my favourite actors anyway, so I was predisposed to like this. I dress a little bit like him. I too enjoy a cardigan and being depressed. So there we go. And when I had hair, I got told I looked like him by 3 different people, which I took as a badge of honour and also a slight insult because he's homeless. But I think as well with him, it's interesting because you get the first 2 movies. Dumbledore knew Harry's parents as a teacher. McGonagall knew them as a teacher. So you'd have a different relationship to the missing parents. When you get Lupin, it's like, I knew them as equals. I knew them the way you know Ron and Hermione. Like, they're my Ron and Hermione, was James and Lily. So you get a different take on the parents. And that's when you start to get, and again, this comes down to the darker, more adult, more complicated, you start, and something you don't necessarily get as much in the films, the not unpleasantness, but the complicatedness of being a person, which is Harry has this idealized version of his dad. He's a hero. He died for me. He stood up to the Dark Lord and he said, "You're not taking my son." And he died, and he's a great man, and everyone loves him, and he's a hero. And then as the story goes on, you're like, he wasn't always very nice, actually. He was kind of a bully, actually. He was kind of a dick. And you kind of be like, being a hero is not necessarily always being right. It's doing right, but you're not always right, if that makes sense. And I think Lupin is the guy that kind of says, like, he kind of had a habit of getting into trouble. He was not the goody two shoes that your mum was. Your mum was very sweet. Your dad was a bit of a troublemaker, and I had to kind of be the voice of reason in the group and be like, guys, should we be doing this? And I think that you get that complicatedness of, they were teenagers. Does he deserve to die for being a bit of a dick in his teenagers? Maybe not, but I think that works so well. And I remember reading a thing that Thewlis went up for Quirrell in the first, as every actor in Britain did, and he didn't get it. But he's friends with Ian Hart, and when the third one came along, he said, "Oh, I'm up for Potter again." And Ian Hart said, "What role?" And he went, "Lupin." He went, "Take it." And he went, "Well, I've not read the book." He went, "Doesn't matter. It's the best book. It's the best role in the film. Like, he's the best character. You'll have so much to work with in this movie, more than you would have had with my role. Like, you're getting a much better deal." So he was like, "All right, I'll take it." And he did. He gets the best of it. And I think you need that with Lupin because, if you want to look at the metaphor, it's a metaphor for like addiction. If the werewolf is an addiction, and then when he's taken the stuff so that he doesn't have a relapse, at the end of the film he relapses, and that is a terrible thing for an addict to have, and it's something that you always carry with you. So there's that element to it if you want to look at the sort of metaphorical elements of it. And I just think he's great in the role, and it's my favorite character.
No, that's fair. Well, 5 weeks, we got 2 more. Next up, I've got not a lot to say this. Timothy Spall as Peter Pettigrew. Creeped out as a kid. As you get older, you see more of his work. Like, okay, I kind of really like this, but he's freaky. He does a great job at playing a rat. And I love just his physical performance, like when he turns, his hands, the nails, the teeth, the design. The ultimate coward. Again, I'm not one for Harry Potter fandom or people that really not into it, but when people are like, I don't do like fan fiction, that sort of stuff. That's just too much on anything. But the one theory I've always loved of Harry Potter is everyone's like, oh, he should have been sorted into Gryffindor. He wasn't brave. But I once saw a reply that said he was right for picking Gryffindor because he was the bravest person by betraying his best friends. And there's some logic to how that's said, like brave in the wrong way. Obviously, he's not a coward, and it's another loophole. But I like someone reading a different analogy. There's not much time with him in these. They don't get to explore him. I like the enigma around Peter Pettigrew, and I like that ends up becoming another great British actor on screen when they appear.
Yeah, for me, I mean, he has a very small role in this film, but it's almost like the plot is more important around the character than the character itself. We get to see kind of a 5-minute show of his acting, him pretending to be a rat, and then him kind of really showing off those tendencies of, oh wow, he really is a rat, like in every single sense of the word. But I think we get more of him as the films go on. So I think it's not really worth discussing for too long here. But I mean, it's once again another great British actor, another thespian, great performance.
Yeah, I think he's really good in that role, and that role's interesting because up until that point, the disciples of Voldemort have all been zealots. You've Quirrell, who's like, yes, leech off my body, I'll feed on unicorn blood, I'll be a vessel for you. Malfoy, Lucius Malfoy, who is like, I will kill a child. Like, he literally goes to do the Avada Kedavra curse in the corridor. And when and it's quite great in the next one when you have all of the Death Eaters, and they're all, again, the whole Nazi thing. They're the high-ranking Nazi officials. They're the Goebbels and the Goerings and the Himmlers and people like that. They're all like, yeah, we believe in the pure blood. And then you get Pettigrew, who's really interesting because it's like, I'm just scared. And I'm just not a very strong person. And he's kind of, within fascism, he's the person that's like, well, fighting might end in my death, but siding with him might end in riches. So he's quite an interesting one where you're like, you're actually worse because at least they believe in, it's awful to be a Nazi, but at least they believe in it. You don't even believe in it. You're just a little coward. So I think, and he's so good at being that kind of thing, constantly squirming, constantly bowing, the way that he keeps the kind of rat physique of the hunched overness, and it's like he's in a perpetual bow to Voldemort, is really, I think, is a terrific bit of acting from Timothy Spall. He's great.
I agree. I think the one thing, because it's more serious and open, but they've gone in on this logic of the Secret Keeper that it was swapped at the last second, which is why no one ever questioned it being Pettigrew, because it was known that it was serious to everyone bar Dumbledore and the 2 parents. But I've mentioned Sirius Black. I've held off very obvious reasons, guys, and talk until this character at the end. In this film, they cast Gary Oldman, now Sir Gary Oldman, as Sirius Black. Probably the most inspired bit of casting the entire series did. And I don't say that lightly. I'm looking, the likes of Ray Fiennes being involved in this. I'm looking at some of the characters mentioned today, like David Thewlis, people like Maggie Smith, Robbie Coltrane. Contextually, you cast Gary Oldman in, I'm assuming they'd have cast him in 2003 or 2002, who has created this incredible career at this point in time, has broken through in Hollywood, essentially playing villain after villain after villain, with his breakthrough role as Sid Vicious and Sid Nancy, one of the finest British actors. And you bring him into the Harry Potter series as the twist villain. This is the evil psychopathic murderer who's responsible for their deaths. And actually, he's the innocent, rich, flamboyant, anger management, sympathetic character of Sirius, the rogue son in a kind of way. Similar to Prince Damon, different conversation, different series. And I think to put Gary Oldman in this, and we look back at this, I know, Paul, we're going to get the 25 years later segment for you to choose an actor. But then you look at the films that he does after, And then I loved going back to Potter because I wasn't aware of who Gary Oldman was in 2004. It was really The Dark Knight. And I think myself, like many of us, probably had a realization one day when they were like, Commissioner Gordon, Sirius Black. Didn't piece that together till a very long way away. It's one of my favorite characters of the film series. It's got one of my favorite images of the entirety of the film series. Thank you so much to Alfonso Cuaron, Mina Lima, the graphic artist who designed so much of this. You can see it behind me on the stream. This Sirius Black Wanted poster. When I got to meet Garrowman, yes, brag, humble brag. I spoke to him because he signed that behind me. You can't see it on the stream. And he was just talking to me about that day he shot the scenes, where he spoke about the director of photography. They went into like a darkly lit room, and he was just told, do whatever you want to do. We're going to record it. This will be on the posters everywhere. And I love that when this film gets darker, someone mentioned the shot earlier with Mr. Weasley, that image of the conversation, but the intention of leaving that poster at the front left.
Mm.
It's not like cinematography for juniors, but that's just beautiful framing. It's symbolic. My favorite piece of casting, and is phenomenal in the scene he gets, which I think we'll speak about later on.
So Gary Oldman is one of those character actors that can literally play anyone in the series. You could have put him as Voldemort. You could have put him as any of the Mordors. You could have put him as as Harry if you really wanted to. He'd probably do a good job. Even Hermione. Like, you could have done anything. But there are some characters where he gets cast into that role and you go, he's the only one who could have played that role. As an actor, he could play anyone. But specifically, this one role of Sirius, he absolutely nails down. And I think it improves kind of as the films go. And this lays the groundwork. But of course, this film is all about him as a character. And I love the fact that throughout most of the film, we don't actually see him. In fact, the first time we see him, he's a dog. Like, you see the poster of him. That's the only thing you see of him throughout the entire film. But it builds. You hear this almost like, what's it called? You hear this kind of, just rumblings of, oh, he's been spotted, he's been sighted. And it's just that looming danger that you build your own image of what he's going to be like, what kind of a rabid character he's going to be like in your head. And then it's Gary Oldman. And the first scenes of him acting is him being rabid, him being all over the place. And literally, as soon as that scene's over, as soon as they kind of explain everything, it was Pettigrew the entire time. He goes outside and has a lovely conversation. It's like, oh, you could come live with me in the country if you want to. It's just such like a, whoa, okay, now we understand what's really underneath kind of the layers and stuff like that. And Gary Oldman's the only person who could really bring that.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well that in terms of like casting people's knowledge against them, the 1-2 punch of this and Batman Begins the year later do a similar thing, which is obviously in Batman Begins, you've got Liam Neeson. He's Qui-Gon Jinn. He's the mentor. And he dies near the beginning. Of course he does. He's Liam Neeson. He always dies. No, he's the main villain. He's back. And he's going to burn Gotham down. And you're like, I did not see this coming. Oh, no, you've played me for a fool there. And again, Gary Oldman playing a good guy. And in this one, you got Gary Oldman, Air Force One, Dracula, Lee Harvey Oswald, Leon the Professional, Fifth Element. Like, you've got the 90s is bad guy, crazy, screaming, nutty Gary Oldman, and your first image of him is him screaming and looking both ways and looking like Charles Manson and just going nuts. And you're like, he's a psychopath. Excellent. So, and if you haven't read the books, if you're just going in cold, you're like, so he's the main villain, is he? And he's going to show up and they're going to have to fight Gary Oldman. This is going to be a one hell of a showdown. And then he's not. And I think that's really clever casting because as well, when you rewatch him holding that thing and he's screaming, you think he's crazy, but actually when he looks both sides and he's shaking, you're like, he's not crazy, he's terrified. Like, he's screaming because he's scared, not because he's insane. And it's like, that's very clever. And yeah, Gary Oldman is like one of the best actors of all time. And I know that he said that he was in a bit of a career slump when this came along. He was saying that he was taking any role he could because he was a single dad to 2 kids, doing the best he can. And then he said, and Harry Potter showed up and I had 2 young kids that loved the books and I knew that would be a good couple of years worth of work. And then Batman comes along and he's like, well, that's 2 franchises. I've got money in the bank and my kids are going to love it. And I think he does give it his all in this. And I think you need someone with that gravity. Like in all the roles of the adults, you need someone that can hold the attention of the kids. And so you need a Richard Harris or a Maggie Smith. And for this one, you need a Gary Oldman. And I think that scene, I think we've discussed it before, when you've got Alan Rickman, Timothy Spall, David Thewlis, Gary Oldman. If I was one of the three kids, I'd be like, so we just get like a week of free theatre, basically. Yeah. Like, if I was Cuaron, I'd be like, right, so this is your acting masterclass. Watch these four, just do their thing, and this is everything you'll ever need to know about acting. These four are going to teach you how to become the greatest actors in Britain. And it's so good because they're drawing on decades worth of, repressed anger and jealousy. And I think that Thewlis doesn't get his dues in that scene because obviously he's processing 20 years of hating his best friend only to be like, I've hated you for 20 years and I was wrong. And I've mourned you, and you are the one that did it. Like, there's so much confusion in his face that I think it gets missed because Gary Oldman is like on fire. But he's so good in the role that, again, it's one of those ones where it's like, really good luck recasting, because I really think him and Snape are the two where you're like, I do not envy the guy that takes that role.
I think that's fair. We'll find out in, 18 months probably, by the time it's recording this. We'll find out one day. We know who's Snape. We'll see what they do. But Paul, we're going to hand back to you. So we're in the guest spot. Look at them now. Sounds like an insult. It's not the intention. We're going to pick an actor from the film. I say you're going to as the guest. Tate did his on Philosopher's Stone. We spoke about Harry Melling. Last week we spoke about Alfred Enoch. Paul, which actor do you want us to take a look at 25 years later?
So I wanted to pick someone who I actually think has had quite an underrated career post-Potter. And so I've gone with Fiona Shaw.
Oh, okay.
Because she was respected actress of stage and screen before, but kind of an unknown. But if you look at her career post-Potter, True Blood, Fleabag, Killing Eve, Andor, like, she's become something of a household name, but from everything after Potter. So I don't, at the time you'd be like, who's that? Oh, Aunt Patricia, yeah, she's good. Yeah, I've seen her in that other thing. Yeah, she's good. But now if you're like Fiona Shaw, people are like, oh, Fleabag, yeah. Oh, Killing Eve, Andor, yeah, she's her. So I just think she's had a really kind of meteoric career trajectory post-Potter that I think is really fascinating because everyone thinks about the kids as then skyrocketing. But for her, she's one of the ones where it was like, maybe some people knew her. When I look at her IMDb beforehand, it's very much in the mold of sort of lower budget things, more things aimed at... Yeah, she's more of a thespian that kind of dabbles in television every now and then. When you look at her now, like I say, True Blood, going into things like Killing Eve, like Enola Holmes, Ammonite, which was a big film, True Detective, like, so she really cracked America in quite a big way. And then obviously it sort of builds to she's in Star Wars and she gets the best line in Andor, which should have been an even better line. It should have been "fuck the Empire," but sadly we were deprived.
I love that you picked her. You are right. As like the adults go, they crop up in things here and there, and I think Fiona Shaw's remained like one of the great British character actors. I think the only thing I've seen her in pre-Potter is My Left Foot, and I only saw it for the first time like a year ago. And I know her role's not as big in that as other things. I've not seen Killing Eve. I know that's the role.
Have you not seen the Super Mario Bros. Movie, the original?
Thankfully not. No, thankfully not.
The film that nearly killed Bob Hoskins.
Yes. I have seen that film, so I have seen her in something pre-Potter.
Oh, God. Bob Hoskins talking about the Mario film is one of the funniest things. He said to his kids, I'm doing Mario. And they went, oh, what, the game? And he looked and he went, there's a little thing that went like this. And he went, I used to play King Lear.
Oh, no, I love that. I think that's a great choice, actually. I'm not going to lie, I thought you were going to say David Thewlis. I was like, I braced myself for like 2 weeks that I'm glad you've gone not in a horrible way, but I was like, we haven't really spoke about the Dursley's got a passing comment, and she's got a great moment, albeit a deleted scene in the seventh film, which is against books, and I'm very excited to see the different take we got on the Dursleys. But you're right, Fiona Shaw, I love her, and I could waffle about Andor for hours, couldn't I? So I'm gonna dip out of talking Andor, but she does get turned into a brick and is used to destroy Stormtroopers. So
it's
that
just I also think she is very good. I think her performance is really good. The only problem is that I think Richard Griffiths gets more to work with.
Yeah,
he does.
So like he's the comedy, isn't he? He's the physical comedic presence with it.
He's such. I mean, I love Richard Griffiths, God rest his soul, because I love Withnail and I think, and also he used to do a recurring character in The Vicar of Dibley, where he played a bishop, which is honestly some of the funniest comedy. And I'm just a big fan of his stuff. And he, in the first three films, he gets all the really good sort of, oh, you absolute scumbag. I'm warning you now, boy. The bit where he's burning the letters and he's like, it's like, he's so panto villain. And it's like, Petunia doesn't ever really get that moment to shine, even though Fiona Shaw is such a good actress. And, I've sadly never seen her on stage, but I've heard that her on stage is some of the best acting you'll ever see. Like, she's one of those actresses that is just like, yeah, I'll do TV because it's better money, but really I want to be doing theatre. But I just think she's one of those ones. When I was thinking about who I was going to pick, I'm like, well, everyone knows Gary Oldman. Like, he's had a crazy career before and a crazy career after. Thewlis is always in something. And I was like, Fiona Shaw's actually, she kind of skyrocketed in the mainstream in a way that people don't really talk about the adult actors doing. And I'm a big fan of us.
I'm glad you've said that. That's another excellent choice to add to the three we've already got. It's a fun little segment. It's something a little bit different that I think we should do a retrospective, especially for anniversary. And one other thing we'll talk about now before we head into legacy final thoughts: the score. John Williams, the legendary John Williams, the greatest composer of all time. His third and final Harry Potter film. He would be, well, in the documentary he spoke about he wanted to do more, but because of his schedules, they almost made it work for Deathly Hallows. Couldn't do it thanks to Warhorse and Tintin. Different conversation. I love his score for the third film. It's very different to the first two. Some might think it's not even John Williams, but it's got probably one of the best musical. Well, two. Double Trouble I love, even though it's Macbeth.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. Love the choir. The frogs. It's so random, but it's so cool and creepy. That bringing Warwick Davis as Flitwick, but it's not Flitwick in this credited film. But he then becomes the designer Flitwick. Weird conversation. But the bridge sequence as well is excellent. I think this is this might be the best Harry Potter score. But obviously, like Star Wars, everyone will go to the original for what was created there. But individually, this film is scored phenomenally. And he almost goes out like he knows, because the credits, it's a song on the soundtrack, like I think it's called Mischief Managed. It's like 9 minutes, and it's like his Star Wars scores where it's just a suite of everything in the film. And I don't think he does that in the first two. He just does it in the third one. And he always did that at the end of each of his Star Wars trilogies. So fun little behind-the-scenes theory there from me. Anyone to add anything more on John Williams?
I don't really have anything to add other than the fact that it would have been nice to have him continue to do the scores. I mean, there's nothing against people who did the scores later on in the films and stuff like that, but John Williams is the greatest composer of all time for film scores, so you always want to keep the greatest kind of in there. So,
yeah, I mean, he's the best. I do love this score. I like the use of like the harpsichord as opposed to like a piano. That gives it a bit more of a kind of old horror film vibe that fits the tone. And yeah, the kind of, I don't know if it's a flute or a clarinet or something, but there's like a woodwind instrument that kind of becomes the theme of the emotion of the film that you get at the lake, you get on the bridge, that I just think, again, kind of brings in different textures to the score, just gives it this different feel. And I love the fact that he doesn't rely on Hedwig's theme, which you could just be like, what we're going to do for this? Put Hedwig's theme in it. Why? Because it's the best theme tune I've ever written. It's one of the best. It's up there. Look, I did Star Wars, I did Indiana Jones, I did Hedwig's theme. Just whack it in. And he's actually like, no, let's try something else. Let's try a different texture. And every Harry Potter film has the one track where I'm like, this is the standout track. Like in the second one, it's the music of Fawkes the Phoenix. I think is a really great piece of music. And in this one, I do love Double Trouble. It's so weird that there's just like this. It's so bizarre, but it kind of fits the tone. And I think the score for this is probably the strongest Potter score before we start getting into like Alexandra Desplat with like the 1-2 punch of Deathly Hallows Part 2, because he's got underrated themes in those films. There's some really underrated themes that he writes for those ones that I think get overlooked, and Nicholas Britell writes some really good ones for Dumbledore's death is, I actually think, one of the better pieces of music in the... It's so good that they reuse it for the whole Snape flashback, and I think that's a really good piece. I think this might be the strongest overall score in the series, and I don't know how with a new theme tune. I don't know how you're going to do it.
Leave them to it. Me and Taste didn't we? It's a tricky one, but they got Hans Zimmer, so that's two names that come off well.
It's like the Avengers theme tune. Like if you reboot the Avengers, it's like you're going to have to keep that theme tune, though. Why? It's just good. It's really good, guys.
We'll find out. I'm going to say we'll find out in December. It's got to be a title sequence, but that's going to be one of the big question marks. So as we start to round out looking at this film's legacy, it grossed $810 million off a $130 million budget. Once again, one of the highest grossing films of the year. The Potter films would continue to be gigantic. And heading into favourite scene, I'm going to jump in first. We might have the same. Two of us might have the same. The Shrieking Shack, for me, Country Mile, not just the best scene of this film. I think it's one of the greatest scenes of the entire series. Maybe the best scene, maybe the best performed scene. Bringing in British legends of cinema, of the stage and TV. Stage and screen is the official term. To just allow Thewlis, Oldman, Rickman, just to go at each other. Where, as you mentioned earlier, Paul, the young actors almost watching as passengers, an acting masterclass. It feels like a stage performance. The Shrieking Shack design, the fact that the entire stage moved when they would film it, and they're all performing there, going through, one of the most timeless times of their life. The bluffing of, we want to kill you, Harry. Actually, no. That the way he pronounces that rat is still one of the best pronunciations ever. Don't know why, don't know how, love it. Every single line is just said with pure devotion, and it is like something you would expect at the theatre. If you were at a stage, at a play, that's how they would speak to one another, and they just let it happen. Going back to what I said earlier about the cuts that weren't aging up the cast, you get to bring in these legends. Everyone gets their own moment. Even Snape, who's knocked out like straight away, he's so joyous, like his victory, going in on the Dementor's kiss. Then you get to Pettigrew and his little rat expressions, being scared, hiding as they're chasing him. It's my favourite scene. I think it's the best scene, and it's one of the ones I sometimes go back to if I want to see a clip out of isolation. It is always the Shrieking Shack, and even the build-up to bring in John Williams once more, like when the door closes and it's Sirius Black, just the music cues that come in, like the big villains there, and it's perfect. No notes. Tate, it's over to you.
I've got a notable one, and then what I think is probably, I don't know whether it's my favourite scene or not, but it's definitely one that definitely stands out to me. A notable one is the first introduction of the Dementors, on the train. Brilliant horror sequence for kids. That, is a pure, how to do a pure horror sequence in a kid-friendly film. Like,
do you remember the TV spot? It was everywhere, like the hand coming, like the claw coming over.
Yeah.
So the freezing of the bottle. Sorry to steal your moment.
It's so you're so right for that. It's such a horror film. It's so. Oh, that is a good pick.
It's a notable scene, but actually, my main pick is going to be the big blockbuster moment, which I'm calling Harry's first big wizard moment, because in the first two films, he doesn't have he doesn't have a big whiz moment. He doesn't whiz all over the screen, like, you know. But like in this film, you have Expecto Patronum, you have the Patronus charm at the lake, which is him screaming the spell and having that moment of finally he actually has the potential to be a great wizard. The first time you look at it and you go, oh, he's actually quite a powerful character instead of just being the chosen one who gets lucky. And I mean, how does he slay the snake? He gets lucky because, you know, the phoenix claws its eyes out and then suddenly he just stabs it because he's in the right place, right time. Like, how does he defeat, you know, Quirrell? He kind of has the stone in his pocket and, you know, he kind of, once again, kind of gets bailed out by touching him and that burns him. This is the first time that he actually wins the day, and it's the reason why is because he actually means it because of his magic. It's the first time he does a powerful spell and shows that he is powerful with it. And it's his first big, like, I remember every single time they advertise on ITV, they show that scene. And a lot of the time for Harry Potter, when they're showing off, like, Harry doing a magic thing, it's that scene. And it's the one scene that was burnt into my mind from this film is him running out in front of the lake. Your dad's not coming, Harry. Running out, Expecto Patronum, shouting it and doing the spell, and just like it suddenly everything clicks into place like it was Harry the entire time, and he has that big whiz moment, as we're now going to call it. So yeah, I like horror ghouls on train and big whiz moments.
I will say the thing you say about that, like that's when he becomes a proper wizard. I do think is actually it's undone in Deathly Hallows, which obviously you guys will talk about later. But A Cut That Hurts is the final battle against Voldemort, because he gets a really good like speech where he's like,
Yeah,
I actually he has the moment where he's like, I understand magic.
He spells the whole he spells the whole thing out and humiliates
it's like something
him.
clicks in his head, and it's like and it's such a shame because you could have done loads of flashbacks, a whole montage, every single moment leading up to this of him going, there's a reason I'm the chosen one, and it's not luck, and it's not misremembering, and it's not one kid or the other, it's me. It's always been me, it's always gonna be me. I am better than you, and this is how I do it. And this is the moment where you get the spark of he conjured that from pure emotion, and that's what makes him better than Voldemort. And he says it in other films, there's a reason why I'm going to win, it's because I have friends and I have love. And I think it slays the seed in this one that unfortunately for whatever reason they kind of robbed Daniel Radcliffe of his, you know, Steve with the hammer in Endgame. You've robbed him of his.
They rob him of his later on big whiz moment.
Big whiz, because that is also the fact that it's just two people throwing fireworks at each other in like a war zone, as opposed to what you get in that final film, in the final book, which is everyone is watching them. Every Death Eater that's still alive, every single, they're all there to watch, and that's the moment where Harry's like, "Yeah, I've had help. A lot of help. People have really propped me up, but this is my moment to actually prove why I'm the chosen one, and you're going down." And that moment is a great moment for me in this film. It's the bridge scene for me. I just think it encapsulates the changing tone. It encapsulates why these films do work, which is the actors, which is that tragedy that's at the center of this story, which is two young parents dying and a kid being orphaned, and whatever else happens with all the things, I think it always circles back to this one void in him that he's constantly looking outward. And again, it comes down to that scene that they kind of robbed him of, which is he's looking outward in every film. He wants a mirror or a stone or a diary or a map or a dad or a this or a that. Oh, if I get the Triwizard Cup, I'll feel complete. If I get this prophecy orb, I'll feel complete. If I do this. And this scene kind of lays the groundwork of it's inside you the whole time. You just need to believe in yourself. You will complete yourself if you just accept what's happened and accept who you are. And I think that scene, for me, the score, the design of the bridge is such, because also it's like that bridge is terribly designed. There's like no like support for the midsection. It's like so badly. No wonder it falls apart in the last film. But I just think that is one of those ones where, again, you're just like, these actors, man, they really commit to the bit in a film that you could kind of phone it in because it's a visual effects movie, but Thewlis and Radcliffe really give it their all, and I think that is the emotional centre of the film for me. I do also like the werewolf.
I think it's a great scene. I think everyone's picked great scenes, if I'm honest, for this, because there's so many wonderful ones in this too. Especially the Dementors. I can't believe I haven't talked about the Dementors. Yeah, it's quite something. And there's a lot. It's a
That
very
massive
performance-driven
hand
film.
opening the door
Yeah.
is so
Mm.
creepy. It's because it's so what you imagine the boogeyman to look like when you're a kid. You know, like
Yeah.
when you picture when someone goes, the boogeyman's going to get you. You imagine these massive hands and this cloak, and it's such a childhood fear of, in the middle of the night the door opens, you're like, oh, who is it? And in this film, it's whatever you're most scared of. It's going to suck the actual joy out of you. Like that metaphor for depression is such an interesting one, where it's like you have to hold on to your happy memories to defeat it. Is, I think, a very clever way of addressing a serious issue for kids. But yeah, they come and they suck the joy straight out of you. It's terrifying.
No,
And the cure is chocolate, which is always good.
Yeah.
Lupin's eat, you'll feel better. I'm like, do you know what, Lupin? I agree with you. I do feel better when I eat.
And they sell it at the studio at all. There's lots of things there, but not Lupin's chocolate. It's called something else. But we'll find that in a few more weeks. But this has been pretty excellent. We're heading to final thoughts now, so I'll sort of merge into more ways it stand. Kind of what we've discussed for almost 2 hours, which will surely be the longest of the series. Because we're not going for 3 people, any of us. We needed it for Azkaban, and there's a reason why. And the reason why is this is regarded as the best of the Harry Potter films, and in what is a consistently excellent series. This isn't there's 3 good films to pick from and 5 bad ones, or there's 7 average ones and a good one. You could swap so many of them around. They're very interchangeable if you did a ranking. But something about Azkaban, and maybe it's us doing film or running a channel or having that vested interest further than maybe just Potter, but this hits out of a level. And what we said about Philosopher Saint, that the first one's a springboard that they all go off. This sort of takes it to the next level of, okay, we've used that springboard. Now we've took it to the next level, and good luck sustaining this level. Just a very good job of that. But this puts it into the upper echelons, I believe, of series. And I'll always big up the British cinema impact of it. We've mentioned some of the incredible British actors added to this cast that continue to be in this, that careers rise through this as well. I do think this is the best Harry Potter film. And I do think, in turn, that is down to Alfonso Cuaron coming on board as the director. Credit to the producer, David Heyman, for hiring him, for being authorized by Warner Brothers. It's still a left field choice. And I'd imagine, contextually 2002 or 3, Kenneth Branagh on paper is a bigger name. He's just done a Potter film. He's Kenneth Branagh. He did all this in the 90s. What's this? You're going for a Mexican director? And it ends up being one of the wisest choices they could do. And in retrospect, as is a retrospective, it is one of the best choices. And it's the biggest coup. It's a 2-time Oscar-winning director that did a Harry Potter film. There's only 8 of them in existence, and he did one of them. I think that's quite special. And I believe one of only 4 directors that worked on the films. So you put it that way, it's even rarer. So that's my very glowing final thoughts on the Prisoner of Azkaban.
My final thoughts kind of reflect what the final scene is, which is Harry getting a new broom, going and giving it a test flight, and it's the only film that ends on a freeze frame. And freeze frames are used in films to reflect on kind of moments that you wish you were stuck in that moment. Moments where you wish like time would just stop still and you could live that forever. And that's kind of what that film, or what this film gives. None of the other films finish that way. That's a directorial choice. But this is one of those films where it's like, this is, as far as the series is concerned, as good as you can get. Like this is the moment that you want to last forever. I mean, it's a reflection on the theme of the film as well. It's kind of the last film where things end happy for him. Like in the entire series, everything else is misery past this point. But it's one of those moments of kind of.
Ignore that. That's something falling over. That's the drink's gone. No Dementors.
Eat, you'll feel better.
It's in my opinion the best film in the series. It's in a lot of people's opinion the best film in the series. It's one of those films where I can go back and watch it in isolation. It's one of the films where I go back and I restart the series from this point and skip the first 2, just so I can get to kind of the darker parts of the series and stuff like that. But like we said, we have all different favorite scenes. We have all different notable scenes and stuff like that, and all of them are great. And that's just proof that this film is a fantastic film. Brilliant casting, brilliant cast acting as well. Great direction, and the story just ages up a lot and continues. And it's fantastic to watch kind of the journey as it goes along.
Yeah, I mean, and to piggyback on what you said about ending happy, it's interesting. Every other film ends with a significant death. You got Cedric, you got Sirius, you got Dumbledore, Dobby, Voldemort. Um, so like every single film is sort of bookended by a death, and this is the last one that's actually like no death. And if I'm not mistaken, nobody dies in this film. I think this is the only film without a body count because Quirrell's dead. Nobody dies in the second one, actually, to be fair. Well, the Basilisk, but the Basilisk can, the Basilisk can get
technically
fucked,
Tom Riddle's diary person
Yeah.
dies.
Horcrux.
Oh, Horcrux does die, and obviously,
Look at
you
me
got
being
Quirrell in
snobby.
the first one. So this is like the only film without a body count, and yet it's considered the darkest, scariest, most adult, and yet actually nobody dies, nobody's tortured, nobody's, there's actually, it's a fairly bloodless film. It's a fairly violentless film. It's not a particularly violent film, particularly human on human violence. There's a bit of dog versus werewolf. So
You
it's
also get
interesting that it
Hermione
manages.
punching Tom Felton in the face. But
Oh, the most satisfying punch in cinema. Oh God, it's so satisfying. I forgot that. Well, I can't believe I didn't mention that as the best
that's
scene.
the scenes.
Oh, 3 movies of thank you, Hermione. With technically, what is the worst punch I've ever seen? There's no force in that, but that's like you really like. It's like he could have dodged that. Excellent squirming from Tom Felton. Oh, my nose. Also, when Buckbeak hits him, it's time to kill me. He really finds his groove in this film. But yeah, I think the legacy of it is also it's a gateway for horror. I think a lot of people, this was kind of their introduction to what horror films could be. And I know a lot of people who are big horror film fans cite this and maybe, kind of these sorts of films, Lord of the Rings as well, being their sort of intro to horror in a way. It's introducing those things. And I think it's got its own, it's kind of quite standalone, even though it follows on from 2 films and leads into, another 4 or so. It feels the most sort of its own in a way that you can kind of come into it a bit like Revenge of the Sith. Like you can kind of come into it cold and you will very quickly get into the groove of it, and it has its own sort of rhythm. And I think that's probably why people rate it so highly, is that it feels so singular compared to it feels a bit more of a franchise as you get to the David Yates in-house start, a bit like Mission Impossible. You kind of you get that kind of Christopher McQuarrie machine-like later films, and I think this one, is the kind of Rogue Nation, no, not Rogue Nation, Ghost Protocol. This one feels the most sort of out there and weird and wacky, and that's why it's my favourite.
I love that. There's so many great reasons for this. I'm glad about this discussion. We're coming at just under 2 hours now for everybody watching at home. Paul, what are you up to at the moment? Where can people find you for more Potter?
If you find me on my socials, which I'm sure will be in the link or something, Paul Klein Yo with 2 O's on Twitter, you'll find my Linktree, TikTok, where I do reviews and a lot of really stupid videos. It's like, somebody's on their summer holiday because they've got time on their hands. And you can find, I'm still editing and writing for Filmhounds magazine. You find my Letterboxd, where you'll find my opinions there and everything else, really.
Excellent. Everybody, please follow Paul on there. This has been another episode of the Harry Potter Retrospective, celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Philosopher's Stone. And we will be back this Friday with Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, with an excellent guest lined up for this one. Like most of these films, people have slotted in very well into where they want to go. I think Goblet of Fire is always an interesting discussion, given the popularity of the film. And maybe what was missed. That's going to make an interesting one. So everybody, please check that out. There's a lot more things happening on the channel. Things are getting very busy. August, of course, is almost dedicated entirely to Harry Potter. We'll be building up to the Return to Hogwarts marketing, as well as the HBO Max series. So that is me rounding out. Thank you both so much for taking time out of your day to join us, have this discussion. Thank you to everyone that's been watching and commenting along with us. Take care. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.